For many people, the truth behind motor racing is lost somewhere beneath flashy cars and grid girls. But beyond this glamour, you have elements of fine-tuned engineering, science and design from the drivers and the teams behind them. My name is Alexandra Legui. I'm a huge fan of motor racing, and I'm on a mission to uncover the changes the sport has undergone from the early 60s until now. I'll be speaking to the fans, organisers, promoters, trainers, and of course the drivers themselves to understand what makes a motor racing driver. Motor racing is a sport for the adrenaline junkies and those that live on the edge. From an early age, I've always been drawn to fast cars and everything else that goes with it. I'm Alexandra Legui, and I've always been curious about what goes on behind the scenes in motorsport. I want to know the ins and outs of motor racing and what happens before a car goes out on the track. The thing is, people put so much emphasis on cars when referring to motor racing, failing to recognise that the drivers are 50% of the sport. I plan to change this opinion by exploring the training drivers' bodies and minds must undergo before they can call themselves a motor racing driver. My journey starts with a visit to Lydden Hill Racetrack, where both drivers and their team put their lives and reputation on the line for the sake of being crowned racing champions. Liam Duran, a rallycross driver, tells me what makes a good driver.
I mean, the easiest way to explain it is car control is car controls. You know, if you can drive a car, as long as it's got 4 wheels, you can drive a car. It just takes different mental attitudes to approach each different sport and you know what you've got to achieve.
Mental attitude does make a motor racing driver, but there's more to motor racing than this. In just a weekend, anyone can become a racing driver, but it takes complete dedication to become one of the true champions. Drivers need to have analytical skill, alertness, tranquility, and the ability to stay calm in a pressured environment.
On the track, I try to take it down a notch, just in case. Try not to beat the car up, knowing that there's not enough time to fix it.
You can't be thinking about what gear, where you're braking off. You should be able to drive a circuit absolutely blindfolded.
Get in the car and you think about start and everything else. After that, the race looks after itself because no 2 laps are ever the same. It's
quite a skill, and some guys take a little bit of use to it. Once they do, you find out who the good and the bad drivers are.
There is certainly a difference between the very best of drivers and the not so good. And here on the track, it's not difficult to see why. There are those who are hungry to win and those who are not. But as I watch the drivers push their cars to the limit, I wonder what toll this can take on their bodies.
I think the fitness is a big thing. If you're not fit, obviously your heart rate goes up, and when your heart rate rises, then you start making mistakes and you can't concentrate. So the idea is to get as fit as you can, keep your heart rate down, keep your breathing sort of at a sensible level. So that's all you can do, really.
Physically, really, you just got to make sure you're in a good enough condition to be able to go racing. Like, I'm not doing a very good job at the moment because I've had some accidents over the winter, both on and off the track, you know, having fun on my bike and stuff like that. So I'm not doing the greatest job at the moment, making sure that I'm in a good condition to get in a car at the start of the season.
Motor racing is a tough and demanding sport. Drivers put a lot of strain on their bodies during a race, and as a result, drivers have to be fit and healthy to avoid accidents. So it seems that having a good body is just as important as having a good car on the track. So with this in mind, I wanted to take a trip back in time to see how far motor racing has come. I've travelled to visit Mike Wilds, a veteran driver who explains the changes in style, technology and safety within motor racing over the years.
It was fantastic fun. There was no aggravation, which came later in my career when you were racing with people. Sometimes it got overly aggressive and there was lots of aggravation involved. This was pure, unadulterated fun.
So obviously in the sort of the 50s and 60s it was renowned. Every driver knew that the risk was their life when it came to motor racing.
Yes.
Has it changed, or?
It has. We didn't know it at the time, but every time you sat in a race car, if you had a bad crash, you could get killed. And I did lose a number of friends during the 70s.
Motor racing is clearly a dangerous sport. On average, 1 in 5 drivers will have an accident. In the early years of the sport, this was nearly doubled. Drivers had to settle with cars that provided little or no safety.
We had no seat belts, it was quite dangerous, no rollover bars. But you didn't think about that at the time. The car was fantastic and you just wanted to get in and race other people.
Drivers have lived close to the edge from the early days of motor racing, but thanks to improved safety measures, the number of deaths within the sport has dramatically reduced. There have been 90 recorded deaths in the British National Racing Series since 1930. Overall, within the history of motorsport, there have been over 3,000 deaths. This has included drivers, mechanics, support staff, and even spectators. With this knowledge, I talked to a paramedic crew on watch at a race to see how often accidents occur in motorsport today.
Do you expect there to be some big accidents?
I suppose expect's not the right term necessarily, but we have to be prepared for it, and that's the whole principle of the team really, and the training and the background that we have to be prepared, if you like, for any eventuality, and that's really the whole principle.
Now there's been some big accidents here at Lyddon Hill, hasn't there? What would be the worst accident that you've ever seen?
I think the spectacular accidents are the rollovers, the multiple rolls and so on, and that's always looks spectacular. Fortunately, with the way the guys are protected, that's often not, from an injury point of view, not the most serious.
Even the best drivers have accidents. In 2011, Liam suffered a major crash which left him shaken to the core and very close to giving up motor racing.
Last year you had a big accident, 9 rolls I heard.
Yeah,
Where was that?
actually here, and it was basically the same event, the shadow event this time last year. So I'm hoping for no issues this time around. Yeah, it was a mistake by a lot of us. I got myself in a little bit of a situation from the start of the main race in the final and got pushed by another car. I mean, I'm not putting blame on anyone else, it's my fault, but yeah, put it into a roll and rolled over 9 times.
So I've discovered accidents still occur, but how has the sport changed in regards to safety?
How much have the cars changed over the years since you've been involved?
Oh, tremendously, because we still see at lower levels of motorsport where they may still have roll cages and rollover bars, and some of the seatings has improved, but these guys are in seats that are wrapped round, are very secure, the seatbelt systems and the rollover
So
protection.
even though the cars are more superior in terms of speed and downforce and dynamics, the sort of safety element has...
Yeah, tremendously. I mean, in terms of safety, the tracks now with the different barrier systems and run-off areas and things like fire protection and so on, which is a very important element with the cars, of course.
So far, I've discovered modern cars are as safe as they can be, but this wasn't the case in the old days. Mike shows me some examples of the cars he drove as a younger man. In those days, cars were made from nothing but cheap aluminium and soft plastic.
The first one, which is quite interesting, was the first time I ever drove a racing car on a circuit.
And what year was this?
This is 1964.
64.
And this is actually a picture of me driving the car for the first ever time. My father took these pictures. He was a Fleet Street press photographer, bless him.
And is this the equivalent to a barrier?
I'm afraid so, yes. They were little oil drums that used to be placed around the racetrack to mark the circuit, basically.
With the cars of today being safer, I wondered how Mike feels about the change.
It is so much safer now, with technology, carbon technology for chassis. Cars can withstand immense impacts now where aluminium or metal tubes couldn't. So much safer now, thank God.
Mike has managed to stay in the motor racing industry for over 40 years. Being able to stay relevant in the sport for a long period of time has allowed Mike to create an identity for himself and giving him utmost respect from his peers and the new generation of drivers.
One thing that was thought about in the early 70s, and it was actually my wife that came up with it, Chrissy, that I needed an identity. She could always tell when Graham Hill was in a racing car, and he had the London Rowing Club design on his helmet. I used to just wear plain crash helmets.
Yeah.
In the 60s when I was in the little DRW. She said, you need a crash helmet design that people will say, oh, there's Mike Wilde's. So the little Formula 3 car was red with yellow graphics. So she said, why don't we have a yellow helmet? So I said, yes, fine. And she said, I quite like diamonds, as I had to buy her some occasionally. So she said, why don't we have a yellow helmet with black diamonds around the helmet? So this is a picture of the helmet design, and I still wear it today. And my son Anthony and my son Michael, who both raced, Anthony is still racing, and I'm chuffed to bits that they wear the same design.
While Mike showed me the cars he's driven and how they've changed over time, I wondered what is needed to make a race car. I travelled to Backdraft Motors, one of the leading tuning and servicing workshops in the UK, specialising in high-end performance upgrades. Mark Hoskin is Managing Director of BDM, with years of first-hand experience on building and racing professional cars.
So from week to week, it can vary a great deal in here. We've got 3 Lamborghini Gallardo GT3 race cars, and they're cars that we run, so they're here all the time.
And you run them for what sort of track days or?
No, they're all race cars.
Yeah.
We do testing on track, and we do go to track days sometimes to run cars in or give passenger rides, that kind of thing.
With motor racing being such a popular sport, it's not just the Formula 1 drivers that want to test their skill on the tracks. Everyone, from boy racers to the super rich, bring their cars to BDM.
There'll be people who buy a road car and then they want to use it on track.
Yeah.
And we'll set the car up to handle as well as we can on the track, making the best use out of the tyres and things like that. Because you're obviously leaning a lot more on a car around corners as a percentage of the driving, rather than going along a motorway where you're in a straight line. So we tend to tip the wheels in and adjust the toes so the car's a bit more pointy.
What might seem like minor changes to a car can make the difference between winning or losing a race. It's clear that it takes a harmony of dedication from drivers and high-end technology to fuel the fast-paced competitiveness of motorsport. But my journey into the world of motorsport is far from over. I want to know how the drivers cope with the stress of risking their lives on the track, and how the evolution of technology has changed the way drivers train and prepare for this fast-paced sport. I've been travelling the UK racing circuit, learning about the hidden secrets of motorsport. So far, I've learnt about the risks every driver undergoes when they strap into these highly tuned cars, and how both the safety and technology has developed over the years. Now I want to know how a driver's mental state of mind can affect their driving. So, to help me with this, I meet up with Simon Fitchett, one of the world's leading personal and mental trainers, who has worked with the likes of David Coulthard, among other top Formula 1 drivers.
I'm also a qualified psychotherapist and clinical hypnotherapist.
Okay.
So I work here solely as a psychotherapist and clinical hypnotherapist. You're always working sort of on a physical and mental level, really. You try and sort of bring the training together as well, working on the mental side of things as well. So the training isn't just monotonous and just sort of, one-dimensional.
No matter how much a driver might train on the track, there are always obstacles that can affect their driving. I wanted to know what else a driver has to contend with on top of the huge pressure of the race.
There is a massive amount of expectation on the shoulders of any driver, not just from the team, but from sponsors, from media, family, friends. Things can be said by the media that can affect them as well. And no matter how tough these guys can be mentally, none of us are infallible. And there are always things that will affect us.
It never occurred to me that the pressure of the media spotlight could affect a driver's performance on the track. Some believe that it's almost as important to prepare for the pressure of a track as it is to train for a race itself.
Some of the youngsters, they really don't have a clue. They're just getting started in motorsport. If somebody points a camera at them, they're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights. They don't really understand the media and how they can use the media to their advantage.
Mental pressure is that you kind of have to divide yourself into entertaining sponsors and being that lucky, joyful person, laughing and keeping everyone happy and being a people's person.
It's not just the drivers who feel the pressure of the sport. The stress of delivering a winning performance is felt throughout the sport, even behind the scenes, where the cars are being made ready for the track.
We tend to find that our customers are these customers that want to get this adrenaline out of their system. They're very passionate about what they do. They want it now and they want it perfect. And time frame is the pressure. And they don't want to go to track days, go around the corner and the car breaks down. They want to be able to trundle around racetracks all day long, which a lot of these road cars aren't designed to do. So tuning is a necessity more than a nice thing to do, if you like.
Despite the intense pressure that drivers undergo in the professional racing circuit, it's not a sport that people often leave. Even after years of highs and lows, Mike is still as involved as he can be, both on track and off.
I've had 46 glorious years of competition. If I don't get a drive this year, it will be very sad, but it's not the end of Mike Wilde's in motorsport. I will have the passion for the sport until I die. There is no way that I shan't be involved in motorsport in some way till the day I die.
Mike's determination to keep on racing is clearly an instinct that has helped him become a world-class driver. For the new generation, there are a host of techniques that trainers will use to keep them focused and competing at their best.
In terms of their focus mentally, they've really just got to be pretty much focused on what they're doing with the team, with the car, and just extract the maximum out of the car they can, the maximum, use the time as efficiently as possible for developing the car within that testing time prior to the first race.
When a driver feels that they have taken their training as far as it can take more than skill and dedication to find that extra inspiration. iZone is a development facility that is leading a frontier of new holistic and training methods, as well as super modern technology. iZone work with the three main components of making a skilled driver: mental health,
the ability to perform under pressure,
fitness.
Fitness clearly is extremely important in any sport.
And simulation.
It's becoming a very important part of motor racing now because driving is very expensive. We take drivers all the way from 8-year-old karters all the way up to, if they follow a single-seater career, up into GP2, which is just the formula below Formula 1. We also take GT drivers, and that can include professional drivers, but also in GTs you have a lot of gentleman drivers, so we've had gentleman drivers up to 65 years old, and also drivers that want to go into touring cars. So we really cover the broad spectrum of ages and also abilities. We don't really select drivers out. If you don't have natural talent, you can't come to iZone. iZone is all about making the most of whatever natural talent or potential you have.
Okay, so breaking it down a little more, can you tell me what the mind preparation would be for a driver and what the iZone offers them?
We work with the unconscious or the subconscious mind, or as we like to say to our young karters, your autopilot state, rather than your thinking, trying state. And for most adults, they'll have experienced, I always use the example of driving on the road, and you could have an in-depth phone conversation as you're driving home. You arrive on your drive and you think, so, my goodness, how did I get here? And it's important to think about that because it's an incredibly complex process that your unconscious, subconscious mind goes through to enable you to have a telephone conversation, be deeply ingrained in that, so that takes some concentration, but then the driving happens totally for free. You don't know it's happened. And I always explain to our drivers that actually, although I think they're getting close to it now, there's no car you can buy with all of the technology that major manufacturers put into their vehicles and all of the computing power that's available. You can't get a car to drive you home at night safely.
Listening to John speak, I'm beginning to understand how being in the right frame of mind can drastically change a driver's performance. Accessing this subconscious state is vital for a driver to fire on all cylinders during a race.
In the zone, yeah, drivers will go, you know, I need to be in the zone. When they're in the zone and they're driving, if they're looking at the pit board, then fine, they'll be updated during the race. But if they weren't to look at the pit board, they would not know what lap they're on, they would not know what position they are. They're just boom. And in a way, that's how they need to be.
Speaking to the drivers, I can see how this kind of training can make a huge difference. Tom Onslow-Cole is a British Touring Car Championship racing driver. He told me about how coming to iZone enhanced his performance.
The changes for me have been vast. So I thought, you know, I had the whole driving thing sussed out, and I'm quite a logical person. I'd thought about my driving, I'd taken into consideration my training and preparation and so on. But actually, the expertise that they have here, just, you know, they asked a few of the right questions, and it got me thinking actually maybe I'm not covering everything off, and with their guidance now I like to think that we really are covering, you know, 99% of what will make me perform at an elite level all the time.
iZone leads the industry in more than just mental training. Many drivers come here for one reason alone: to use the state-of-the-art real-life track simulator. This high-tech computer will generate every inch of a real track down to the tiniest detail.
And when I came, it was initially the simulator that attracted me here, and it was a case I needed to learn a circuit, and I thought, you know, rather than going there trying to drive it in a road car, which was quite time consuming, I couldn't do it. I'd come here, use the sim, and try to learn it that way. It worked really, really well, and really that was my first introduction to what they do here. But I realised at that moment that I was only actually scratching the surface of what is possible.
This £30,000 simulator is the main attraction at the iZone, but it isn't the core of what the experts at the facility can teach.
We try to sort of separate the driver from the machinery and really focus on engineering the driver to help them become the very, very, very best they can be.
The mind coaching is a big part of what they do here, and I guess I begrudgingly admit it is worth a lot. You know, you don't want to give away all your secrets, but what we do here, or what I work on especially, is a lot to do with your vision in the race car. So they have an eye tracker which tracks exactly where you're looking on the circuit, which doesn't sound that impressive, but when you think of your eyes as just a sensor that's feeding your brain, the further you can look, the earlier that you get the information, and the longer you have to react to it. So it's very logical in the way that side of things work.
The eye tracking technology is a complicated piece of equipment originally designed for military use. The drivers at iZone can use the equipment to improve their vision of the track, which in turn feeds all of their other sensors.
With the eye tracker here, we're really just seeing exactly where Tom's looking. So at the moment the vision's a little low, so what we would do after this session would be to, you know, replay this and you know, try to address that. Watch it back, have a look, and yeah, just try then to understand exactly the corrections required for the next run. You know, typically a lot of drivers we find often, you know, a good 20–30% shy of where they could be visually. You know, of course, there's looking ahead, and there's looking ahead in exactly the right place. Yeah, I mean, there's certain places where you think, oh, crikey, he's actually looking at the grass, but he's actually trying to look through the corner, almost trying to, you know, if you like, visualise where that exit point is.
With all I've learnt on my journey so far, I wanted to test my skills on the simulator and find out if I have what it takes to become a motorsports driver. After a few goes in the simulator, it's clear I'm not quite up to the racing standard. Coming to iZone has given me a broad understanding of just how far I would need to take my training to even come close to a professional standard.
It's really sort of looking at a driver in every area possible, because then if we can work on the sort of the accumulation of marginal gains, that's very powerful. So we can make a driver better in maybe 20 or 30 different areas of performance. You know, that can be the difference between, you know, winning a championship or not.
So there you have it. Motor racing drivers are not just born champions. Skill, Attitude, focus, and all other aspects must be developed, honed, and tuned to make a great driver. Throughout my journey, I have found out firsthand from the drivers and trainers that it's not just about the cars. Being a top driver takes a passion and dedication rarely found outside the highest levels. A harmony of technology and mental skill combine to build a racing driver in a sport that is rarely safe, often stressful, but always fast.